Hey guys, I'm Greg with the Neon Tiki Tribe. You've probably seen a few of our other videos that describe the Neon Tiki Tribe project. This video, I want to talk to you about the dyslexic font we use, the patented font we use in the Neon Tiki Tribe series. And by the way, I have a study and some information. If you would like to see it, I will gladly send to you. Just contact me. My information will be at the back of this video. But basically, so the font is called DYSLEXIE. So dyslexiefont.com, you can find the font. Neon Tiki Tribe isn't the only series of books that use the patented font that we're using. There are major corporations like Shell Oil, Pixar, Nintendo, and many others who are using the font now in their emails and their company communications because they realize that little kids with dyslexia grow up to be adults with dyslexia. And while not many people like to talk about it, at least if they put it in their documents, they know this can help some of their struggling employees. It's just going to make it a little easier for them. Also, Henry Winkler uses the font now in his book series called Hank Zipzer, kind of his story when he was a little kid growing up with dyslexia. So more and more each day, companies and authors are starting to use this font in their books. And to be honest, we hope someday every book in the world is written using DYSLEXIE font. Follow along and I'll tell you why. This is a patented font that came from the Netherlands. A guy named Christian Boer created this font. He's dyslexic himself. I want to show you just a little of the elements and why the font seems to work so well for some of these kids. They talk about being bottom heavy, the emphasis, the focus of the letters on the bottom, so they're kind of fat with ink on the bottom heavy. They enlarge the openings on them. They put some letters in italics, and they use deeper inlets for some letters that makes it clearer. They also put a diagonal element on some of them, so you'll see B's and D's have a flat spot in them, so that even if the child's brain flipped it forward or backwards, it does not look the same as the other letter. You'll notice when you get kind of close to that. And you have, by the way, if you're not dyslexic, you have to look really hard at these letters to see that. If you are dyslexic, for some people, it's instant. As soon as they pick up one of the books, they're able to read where they weren't able to read other stuff. They also use differing heights on letters. And he talks about the axis, increasing the axis of the X and O axis there. Also, they add descenders, longer on the P and taller on the F's and the H's. They make them taller, so that makes them easier to distinguish. They use punctuation and capitalization marks that are fatter, so bigger periods, bigger commas. They also, instead of using, you'll see in our books, we don't just slam one paragraph of all letters together. They break them up into sections. It makes it easier for them to read. And there's an extra space in between the end of a sentence, the start of another sentence. So these are all just some things that make it easier to read. But I have this. I will send you also. This is kind of a reading test that they completed here, and it talks about the reading time with the Courier font. Standard reading for the same paragraph, a Courier font took 58 seconds for these known dyslexics to read, where it only took them 38 seconds to read with DYSLEXIE font. So for sure, it's helps some of them. By the way, the font doesn't help every child or every adult who is dyslexic. For the ones it does, it's almost magical. I'm going to show you some testimonials we have. Real quick, I'm going to just give you the discussion and conclusion of this, and I will gladly send this entire thing. You're welcome to see it and read the entire study. But basically, they found that by using the adjusted font, they call it the adjusted font, there's a decrease in the error rate. The gaze times are shorter, which means they weren't struggling with the letter when they saw it. They would see it and recognize it sooner. Also, that it made reading easier, at least for dyslexic. It made it easier. And more than 70% of the people in the study preferred that font over the Courier. Standard Courier is what they compared it against. But anyway, they said this could very well permit, in very specific case that concerns reading and better attention control. So please ask me. I'll gladly send you the study. And But I always say the proof is in the pudding. Does it really work? So I want to tell you two personal stories, people I know here in Titusville, Florida. One was a friend of mine. His daughter's in 8th grade. She had been struggling all the entire time she was in school. They had a tutor for her for about 3 years. And so that was going on. She's trying to learn. And I said, just for the heck of it, take a couple of the Tiki books home with you and just see if they help. They don't help every child who's dyslexic. So he took them home. He said, Greg, oh my gosh. He said, as soon as my daughter picked it up, he said, I could see in her face, her eyes lit up. He said, she didn't say anything. She went page by page through the entire book, front to back cover. She looked at her dad and she said, Dad, I can read. I'm not stupid. And, you know, he was stunned. So he told me later that after that had happened, they were able to get her the help she needed. That was kind of a diagnosis for dyslexia in a sense. But they said that all of her grades and all of her other classes, and keep in mind the rest of her classes do not have that font in it. So, and I'm going to tell you some feedback we've gotten from dyslexic professionals, dyslexic therapists in just a moment. But anyway, so it was like a overwhelming confidence boost for her, self-esteem boost for her. And all of her classes just seemed to go easier and better for her once she knew that she could read. She was armed with that information. I can read. I'm not stupid. So what is it? So she started working harder in all those classes to see if she could read. But so that was one story. Another friend of mine's in the hotel industry, and she had a friend with a son, and he was struggling, you know, from day one. And basically the schools said, it's just developmental. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. But he just continues struggling. This kid's in 3rd grade. And so I said, just the same thing. I just take a couple books home. She took them home to him. And she said it was the first time ever in his entire reading life that he did not transpose the letter D and B, because those are easily flipped back and forth, kind of like P's and Q's. They flip upside down, they flip backwards. But it was the first time her son had ever read straight through without transposing it. And now the Tiki Tribe was his favorite series of books. Now, same thing. He went on to get this little boy help. And he's doing pretty well. But anyway, so I want to say this. We've had a few, well, when it comes to the dyslexic community, people who work with kids with dyslexia, we couldn't even get them to return our phone calls. We couldn't get them to respond to emails. But two had the courage to tell us. And we knew something was wrong. We couldn't figure it out. But one dyslexic professional guy said, Greg, what good is it if the Tiki Tribe books have this patented font in it when every other book they're going to read doesn't have the font? How's that going to help my kids? I had one other, and I'm going to explain that. I had one other dyslexic therapist, a lady, and she said, Greg, that font simply can't help kids who are dyslexic. The only thing that works is a multisensory approach. So what we say is, before you discount us and discount the Tiki Tribe series and place no value on it whatsoever, just consider this. If you have a child and you're not sure if they're dyslexic, you're trying to figure it out, and you hand them a Tiki Tribe book and they're able to read, you know instantly that the child is dyslexic, because the only difference is the font. But how can you discount when a child, like the two examples I just told you about, when they pick the book up and they go, oh my gosh, I can read, I'm not stupid. That's an instant confidence boost. It's an instant self-esteem boost for these kids. I mean, that's priceless. So sure, the rest of the books they have don't have the font in it, but you've just instilled in this child that I can read. It's not me. I can read. So then we can get those kids help. So the first way is instant recognition for some of these kids. Remember, it doesn't help all the kids that are dyslexic. To be honest, I'm not sure of anything that works for every child who's dyslexic. But another way that helps is for those kids, like the ones I'm referring to, whatever percentage of kids those are, imagine saving them 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, 20, 30, or 40 years. Some people, if you hear their stories, I know a guy who's 70 years old. He didn't get diagnosed until he was 68. He didn't get the diagnosis. So it speeds the process up that they're diagnosed. And the other benefit to that is that now you can get them the professional help much sooner. We still need the dyslexic therapists. We still need the dyslexic professionals. We're not saying the Neon Tiki Tribe is the end-all, be-all for dyslexia. All we're saying is, wow, we paid extra money to put the font in our books in the hopes that we can help some children. And if we can help them, wow, that's very powerful. Another aspect to this is the cost. Neon Tiki Tribe books, if you just owned one for your reading class, just one, it's $14. It has to be the least expensive tool in your toolbox when you're trying to help kids who are dyslexic. It's very inexpensive to own the entire set. By the way, schools and libraries get a 20% discount on these books. So these are ways that can help. And the way we look at it is we're going to continue to put this font, license this font in our books here. And our thinking is that even if we help a tiny percentage of kids around America and around the world, for sure, the illiteracy rate is going to come down. And for sure, the literacy rate is going to improve. We see it as a win-win situation for everyone involved. By the way, keep in mind, Neon Tiki Tribe books were not built solely for kids with dyslexia. We were building the series long before we ever even knew what dyslexia was. I'm not dyslexic. My partner's not dyslexic. None of our family members are dyslexic. And I tell you, dyslexia doesn't rank very high on important issues the world has to take care of. My personal opinion is it might be at the very bottom, if not really low. When you start talking about kids with cancer or homelessness or hungry or abuse or any of the other issues that are out there, dyslexia is way down on the totem pole. And part of the proof is in the 80-20 rule. 80% of kids in schools do not have dyslexia. They're going to do just fine going through school. But the 20% that have dyslexia that struggle getting through school, I would venture to say they represent a much higher percentage of the failure rate in schools and of the kids in detention centers. And by the way, the Einstein Montessori School in Cocoa, Florida is a school solely for kids with dyslexia. And right on the front of their website, it's stated, at one time, I'm not even sure it's there, but it's stated that 85% of kids in detention centers have reading disabilities. Reading disabilities. And that 50%, and by the way, this wasn't on their website, but we read that 50% of kids in detention centers actually wind up in prison. So, wow, if we start to connect the dots, just because a little second, third, fourth, fifth grade kid struggles to read, he's going to get in trouble. He's going to act out. He's going to be sick. He's got to go to the bathroom. I don't want to read. Whatever the case is, he winds up in detention center. He winds up in the principal's office. It's a slippery slope for these little guys and girls. So that's all we're saying. To us, it's very valuable. And I know for a fact the testimonials that we have, and the testimonials are on Christian Bohr's website. I know for a fact it helped all of those people. So that's all we'd say. Hey, if you're a dyslexic professional, we love you. If you're a dyslexic therapist, we love you. We're on your side. We just hope you'll at least consider us as maybe one of the tools in your toolbox. That's all. Thanks so much for listening.